Hi everyone. Many fans of superhero movies dream of becoming Spider-Man or Superman, at least for an hour. Just imagine, you have superpowers to solve any problem, and all the villains stay away from you. However, you don't really have to be a character from the Marvel or DC universes in order to save the world. Sometimes random people are here to help. Today, we will tell you stories about ordinary citizens without policeman badges who help detain dangerous criminals. Let's get it on. Catching a thief with a lasso. Cowboys are one of the most American things ever. A key part of their image is the lasso, which is a loop of rope made of rawhide. In the past, it was used mainly for catching runaway cattle on a ranch, and today at special performances where riders demonstrate their skills. Robert Borba from the US state of Oregon has impeccable skills when it comes to handling a lasso. He also seems to have an incredibly fast reaction, and this story proves this. One day, Robert heard a woman screaming in a supermarket parking lot. Turned out that a thief had stolen her bike. Robert kept his cool, saddled up, caught up with the robber, and with perfect precision threw the lasso at the thief. Then the cowboy tied the legs of the criminal and called the police. Witnesses, of course, were amazed at his skills. Turns out that Robert is a champion bull rider. Road blocking. Take a look at this footage. You have to admit it looks like it came straight from some action movie with fast pursuits and dangerous criminals. Well, you won't believe it, but in fact what you see is a real record right from the streets of Los Angeles. A stolen BMW rushes through the city center, ignoring all traffic rules. Up to a certain point, the criminal demonstrates remarkable driving skills. For example, he drives around obstacles at great speed and fits into sharp turns. But this doesn't last long, and soon the stolen car drives right into the trunk of the car in front of it. Realizing that he has seconds to escape, the robber quickly jumps out of the saloon with a longboard and continues to flee from the police. Well, not on the longboard, but his feet. Oddly enough, in this case, it turned out to be a faster option, and it would be fine. Perhaps he would even escape from the police car. However, Lou Pizarro, a pickup truck driver, got in his way. When he saw the criminal, he reacted quickly and blocked his path. This gave the police a few seconds to catch up and arrest the criminal.
Negative K, nothing further, just see the cabbie on the corner.
It's just instinct, just to, block the guy off.
Fancy footwork. One day, the hero of our next story, whom the police simply call Bill, went to the library with his granddaughter, and there he became a part of an incredible story. It happened when he was standing at the entrance to the building. Suddenly, he heard a sound of police sirens, and soon noticed a guy running towards him.
God!
In just a few seconds, Bill needed to decide what to do. Ignore and pretend that he didn't see anything? Well, it's somewhat irresponsible. Stop the criminal. Not an easy task, especially considering that he is armed. And in the end, the man came up with a great idea. Apparently, he remembered school days and decided to trip the criminal. So Bill not only helped catch the fugitive, but probably saved the lives of several people. Recording a burglar. For many children, being alone in an empty house is a real test. Their imagination plays tricks on them, and strange rustles scare them, especially if the day before they watched a scary movie. In any case, all of the above definitely doesn't bother this brave girl, Taylor from Massachusetts. One afternoon, she was alone at home and suddenly heard a knock. Taught by parents not to open the door to strangers, the girl decided to quietly peek out of the window. She saw a suspicious man trying to knock on her house door, then on the neighbors. When no one answered, the man tried to break into the back door. You have to admit, any child would have already hidden under the bed, just shivering from fear. However, she just kept calm and called 911, describing everything that was happening in detail. And before hiding in the closet, she also took some photos and videos of the criminal when he was trying to get into her house. Eventually, the detailed information provided by Taylor helped the police quickly detain the criminal after arriving at the crime scene. It's amazing how she managed to keep her cool. Often, even adults cannot get it together and stay calm in such situations. Car chase. In 2015, the life of the Charleston city in South Carolina was overshadowed by a terrible tragedy, but fortunately, the killer was apprehended the very morning after the crime. However, if not for the hero of this story, the search for him could have taken much longer. A local woman, Debbie Dills, spent the terrible hours after the crime watching the TV. She was so shocked by what had happened that she watched every single newscast. The woman was attentive enough to perfectly memorize the suspect's face and even the way his car looked. So, when the next morning she was driving to her work at a flower shop 400 kilometers away from Charleston, she immediately noticed this particular car on the road. She looked closely at the driver's haircut, which was incredibly similar to that of the killer. Debbie called her boss, who immediately alerted the police and decided to follow the car and try to write down its license plate number. By then, a police patrol was on its way to her location. The officers detained the criminal right away and identified him as Dylan Roof. By the way, a couple of years later, the murderer was sentenced to death and is currently awaiting execution at Indiana State Prison. Military training. Having just returned to his native Florida from a special mission in Iraq, war veteran Eddie Peoples was hardly planning on immediately getting into a dangerous situation. However, civil life turned out to be full of surprises, and suddenly he found himself amid a bank robbery. That day, Eddie and his two sons went to the local bank branch for a routine errand, when suddenly an armed man burst into the room. He told the people inside not to move and demanded the employees empty the cash registers and fill his bag with money. And he did it so casually that in the first few seconds, Eddie thought that it was a joke. His children even began to laugh, whether out of fear or a lack of understanding, and attracted unwanted attention to themselves. That's when Eddie remembered his military training and came up with a plan of action at once. He put the chairs in front of his kids and shielded them with his body. The robber, meanwhile, grabbed the bag full of cash and headed for the exit. However, the story did not end there. Eddie ran out into the parking lot, got into his minivan to follow the criminal and deliberately crashed into his car. This, of course, made the robber angry. He got out of the car, came up to Eddie and put a gun to his face. But again, Eddie's military training helped. In one swift movement, he grabbed the robber's arm, twisted it and seized the weapon. And soon enough, the police came to arrest the criminal. Threatened with a sword. Never give up hobbies that bring you pleasure. You never know when you might need them. This guy probably never thought that he'd be able to catch an actual criminal thanks to a homemade sword that he made just for fun. It all started when the police officers tried to detain two cyclists for breaking traffic rules in the city of Tampa. The cyclists suddenly started to resist and even engaged in a shootout with the officers. During the chase, one of them decided to climb over the fence and hide at a nearby house. He was probably hoping that his menacing appearance and the sounds of gunfire would scare its owner off, but they didn't. A former US Army soldier called Matt grabbed his sword and was brave enough to face the criminal face to face. In many ways, it was his actions that helped the police quickly detain the offender. Running a race. The media doesn't disclose the name of the hero of this video, calling him simply a Good Samaritan. Not only was he in the right place at the right time, he was also not afraid to confront a fleeing criminal. This footage shows the wanted suspect Stone Cooper desperately trying to run away from a police officer and a passerby trying to stop him. Even though the Good Samaritan fails, Cooper loses a precious few seconds, slows down and falls to the ground. It might seem like the passerby's help was a small thing, but sometimes even a small thing can change everything. Human arrow. Easter is one of the favourite holidays of children in Britain. There's a tradition to play a special game on this day. Children have to find chocolate eggs hidden by the adults. They search everywhere. Doesn't matter if it's a small house or a giant field. They only need a big and friendly company to make things more fun. So a few years ago, a group of children and parents from Capel Village went on a traditional Easter hunt. But suddenly their peaceful pastime was disturbed by the hum of a helicopter flying above. It turned out that robbers had broken into a building nearby, and the police were trying to establish their location from the air. The thieves, meanwhile, were running around the field not too far from the children and their parents. The smart thing to do was to leave the potentially dangerous place, but the kids came up with a better idea. They lay down on the ground and made arrows out of their bodies, trying to show the police the right direction. Surprisingly, it worked. A few minutes later, the two criminals were arrested. Psst. Dude, are you looking for new technologies and great gadgets? Are your thoughts focused on the future? Do you love huge vehicles and can't imagine your life without robots around you? Then visit TechZone and you'll find all this and more. The link is in the description. You interested? Great.